way back almost 1700 years ago, a single meeting took place. And believe it or not, the decisions made in that room still affect billions of people today. This is the story of the Council of Nicaea, an event that didn't just define a religion, it really helped shape the world we all live in.
Okay, so imagine this. You're an emperor. You've got this huge, powerful empire, but there's a massive debate that's tearing it apart from the inside out. And it's not about taxes or land. It's about an idea. Well, that's the exact problem that the Roman Emperor Constantine was facing, and his solution would end up changing history forever.
So what was this big argument all about? Well, at the time, this new religion, Christianity, was just exploding in popularity all across the Roman Empire. But as it got bigger, a really fundamental disagreement popped up, one that threatened to shatter the whole thing.
And things got heated fast. In the early 300s, a priest from Alexandria named Arius started teaching a pretty controversial new idea. And wow, did that idea take off. It spread like wildfire, and pretty soon, cities were filled with protests and arguments. The faith was becoming seriously divided.
The whole conflict really boiled down to one core question. On one side, you had Arius, and he was arguing that if Jesus was God's son, then he had to have been created by God at some point, right? But on the other side, most of the church leaders, the bishops, believed Jesus was just as divine as God, that he'd always existed and was totally equal. This wasn't some minor detail. It was about the very nature of their faith. So with his empire basically on the brink of chaos, Emperor Constantine knew he had to do something. He decided to get involved directly, which was a huge moment, a political leader stepping right into the middle of a religious debate.
Now, you have to understand, Constantine wasn't just thinking about religion here. He was a practical ruler. He saw all this fighting and unrest, and he was worried it would make his empire weak. For him, religious unity meant political stability. It was that simple.
His plan was pretty ambitious. He called for the first ever worldwide meeting of church leaders, what's called a council, in a city called Nicaea. Get this, he even paid for all of them to travel there, from as far away as Spain and North Africa. And Constantine didn't just host the party, he was right in there, acting as a mediator, pushing them all to find a solution.
So the main goal of this whole meeting was to settle this debate, once and for all. What they needed was a single, unified statement of belief that every Christian was expected to follow.
And the result of all their work was a document that became known as the Nicene Creed. This thing wasn't just a summary of beliefs. Oh no, it was a super carefully worded formula designed specifically to end the argument with Arius and define what Christianity was all about for generations to come. To really nail down the debate, they picked a very specific, kind of technical Greek word, homoousios. I know, it's a mouthful, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It just means of the same substance, or you could think of it as made of the exact same stuff. And that one little word was their solution. So by sticking that word into the creed, the council made their decision crystal clear. Jesus wasn't some lesser being that God created, like Arius was teaching. Nope, he was made of the exact same stuff as God, which made him fully divine and totally equal. This was a direct rejection of everything Arius was arguing.
So what happened to Arius? Well, he stuck to his guns and refused to sign the creed. And the consequences were severe. The council declared him a heretic, which is basically someone who goes against official church teaching, and then the emperor had him kicked out of the empire. They even ordered his books to be burned to stop his ideas from spreading any further.
But you know, they didn't just settle this one big debate. Since they had hundreds of church leaders all in one place, they took the opportunity to get the rapidly growing religion organized and lay down some much-needed ground rules. In total, they passed 20 new church laws, which are known as canons. You could think of canons as the official rule book, and they were designed to create order and make sure all the different Christian communities across the empire were on the same page. For example, they set one single date for Easter so everybody would celebrate it at the same time. They created a clear leadership structure, or hierarchy, and they named the bishops in big cities like Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch as the most important ones. They even made rules for priests, like telling them they couldn't just move to another city to get a better paying job. This was all about building a stable, organized global institution. So why are we still talking about a meeting from the year 325? Because the decisions made in Nicaea didn't just disappear. They have echoed through the centuries, and they continue to shape our world right now, today. I mean, the work they did had incredible staying power.
The Nicene Creed wasn't some temporary fix. It became the absolute bedrock belief for mainstream Christianity, and it's still recited in churches all over the world, nearly 1,700 years later. That's amazing.
So, what are the big takeaways here? Well, Nicaea basically established three huge things for the future. First, a single unified set of beliefs that would define Christianity. Second, a new model for how government and religion could work together, for better or for worse. And third, the organizational blueprint that allowed Christianity to grow from a scattered movement into an incredibly powerful global institution.
The story of Nicaea really leaves us with this huge question, one that people still debate today. It shows how a powerful leader helped unify a faith and stabilize an empire, but it also set a precedent for political rulers to get deeply involved in religious matters. It really makes you wonder, what happens when political power and religious faith mix?